Well, hello, thanks for joining us and tuning in to this Visit USA Association members chat video. We're going to be talking about the state of Kentucky, known as the Bluegrass State, and we will learn the origins of that nickname in this video. Kentucky is located almost equidistant between the Great Lakes, which are to the north, and the Gulf of Mexico to the south, but it's primarily known as a southern state. Joining us from Kentucky to tell us a little bit about these southern influences and what else the destination offers is Michael Manget, Commissioner of Tourism for Kentucky Tourism. Hey, Michael, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here.
And where are you talking to us from?
I am actually in my office. I'm the only one in my office, but I'm in my office. This is not my normal backdrop for my office. I wish it was. This is one of our beautiful horse farms here in Kentucky, horse capital of the world.
Okay, well, we're talking a little bit about that later on, but let's kick off with your membership of the Visit USA Association. When did you join the organization?
Kentucky's been a member off and on over the years of Visit USA, but consistently for the past 6 years. I know in previous administrations, focus changes, but this is my third time in the office. And every time that I've been here, we've been members. So, but consistently for the last 6 years.
And you've certainly been a pretty active member over those years. You get involved in a lot of the annual events, so you clearly see the benefits of membership.
We do. We participate in, as you said, many of the road shows. We're regular supporters of the newsletter and the bulletin, the road planner, the Unite event, the media, Meet the Media event, most of the quarterly meetings. So it's an incredibly important membership for us and the value that we receive out of it for our marketing over in the UK.
And we're having this conversation in mid-May, which much of the world is still in lockdown. So how important is it at this particular time to be part of an association that is active promoting the USA to the UK trade and to UK consumers?
Well, for us, it's vitally important. I think, all of us as marketers, not just in the United States, but worldwide, we've pulled back from our marketing. You don't want to be tone deaf in a situation like this. So, and out there with a strong call to action to get people to travel when we all have shelter at home restrictions and travel restrictions right now. And I think some folks will look at international marketing, especially a state the size of Kentucky. You may look at it and say, well, that's, for lack of a better word, a luxury. It's not an essential and critical expense that we need to take on. And I disagree with that. I think what Visit USA does for us is it keeps us top of mind. It keeps us out there. We've spent consistently the last 6 years trying to build roads and create and develop relationships in the UK. We've been successful with that, and you don't just want to walk away from that. So we know that there remains strong travel sentiment in the UK. That just like here, people are ready to get out. It's not normal for us to be cooped up and told you can't travel. We think it's going to be even more important to keep that messaging going until we can get back in the market as we normally would. Plus, I think there's going to be a great opportunity for a state like Kentucky and some of our smaller states. I think there's going to be a lot of folks who are less willing to travel to some of the larger gateway cities. They don't want to deal with all the massive crowds. And they're going to be looking for places that you can literally social distance and still have a great time. And as you see behind me, that's what a lot of Kentucky looks like. And there's a lot of opportunity, not just in the outdoors. We've got some great smaller towns with some fantastic experiences. So for us, being a part of the Visit USA and maintaining that membership at this time is as critical as ever, if not more.
Okay, well, let's talk about your role as Commissioner of Tourism. Tell us what that involves. What is your day job?
Well, it looks a lot different now than it did 2 months ago when I came back. As Commissioner of Travel, our agency, we're one of 14 agencies within our cabinet, and that includes everything from our state parks and other facilities. But our role, we're really the chief marketing agency for the state of Kentucky. Our mission is to drive travel and tourism to Kentucky to generate economic impact. And we can all talk about the numbers and the importance of tourism, but more than anything, we're really the brand ambassador for the state. As we market, the more consistently that we can market and put that brand out there for the state of Kentucky, it benefits all areas of economic development, not just directly hospitality and tourism. But we just got some data the other day that showed folks who have been to Kentucky and have seen our advertising have a much better opinion of the state on things as diverse as retiring there or getting an education in the state. So for us, we don't look at it just as destination marketing. We look at it as marketing the state kind of in a holistic manner.
Let's go back to my opening remarks. Why is Kentucky known as the Bluegrass State?
We're known as the Bluegrass State. When the first settlers came into Kentucky through the Cumberland Gap, and these were folks like Daniel Boone, if you're familiar with the famous explorer Daniel Boone. When they came through the Cumberland Gap and looked over, the way the sun was hitting, it made the grass look blue. And so it became the Bluegrass State. We want to go to that state where the grass is blue. To be honest with you, it's not really, really blue. If you come here and look at it, it really is more green. It's just the way it hits. And interestingly, that is a byproduct of, and this is way into the details you may not want it, but Kentucky sits on a limestone shelf throughout our state. And that filters a lot of the bad elements out, but it generates a lot of calcium in the soil. So that calcium gives that tint to the grass. Also, the calcium in the grass is what makes our horses' bones so strong. So that's why we're the horse capital of the world. The horses that were bred here and continue to be bred here traditionally have been stronger and faster. So it all ties into that. And to get really, really deep into it, that limestone shelf also filters out the impurities, which helps make the water here great for distilling our fantastic Kentucky bourbon.
Okay. Anything to do with bluegrass music?
Yes, actually, bluegrass music, there was a gentleman named Bill Monroe who's considered the father of bluegrass music. And he was from Rosine, Kentucky in Western Kentucky. And his band was called the Bluegrass Boys because they were all from Kentucky. So he became so popular on the Grand Ole Opry telecast back in the 30s and 40s that people just began calling it that we want to hear that music from the Bluegrass Boys, and it just evolved into bluegrass music as a genre. Well,
Kentucky's certainly in an interesting position geographically. If you look at a map of the USA, you border Illinois, Ohio, and Indiana to the north, but you've got Tennessee and Arkansas to the south, and Missouri to the west. But am I right in thinking that you see yourself first and foremost as a southern state?
That's true. We really consider ourselves the front porch to the south. So as most of our travelers, as you indicated, come down from the upper Midwest, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, et cetera. And when we started out, you said we're really geographically right in between the Great Lakes and Canada to our north, as well, and the Gulf and the Atlantic Ocean to the south. So we pick up a lot of travelers who are heading south for vacations who will come to Kentucky either going down or back for a day or two stay. We really are right now considered more of a getaway state, a 2 to 3 day visit, and we're a drive market. We don't have unfortunately, we don't have a lot of international direct flights. We have one out of the Northern Kentucky airport to Paris every day. But that's a benefit for us because we do border 7 states. And historically, we've always felt like we're in the South. We are Southern, just listen to the way I talk. But it's a benefit for us because we can pull folks up from the South as well. We'll get folks coming up from Tennessee and Georgia, Alabama to come up and visit our racetracks, visit our parks, go on a distillery tour, and things of that nature.
Okay. So in terms of those Southern influences, what would you point to in terms of being both uniquely Kentucky, but also fitting in with the regional flavors too?
Well, bourbon, first and foremost. Bourbon is a big part of the Southern culture from a culinary standpoint as well as a consumption standpoint. Kentucky makes 95% of all the bourbon in the world and all of the good stuff. The rest of it's counterfeit, as we like to say. But you see from a cultural standpoint that flows into the culinary aspect of it. You mentioned bluegrass music as well, the impact of bluegrass music and has had throughout the South. North Carolina has a great bluegrass culture, bluegrass music scene, I should say, Virginia, West Virginia, and so many others. Really what I think, though, we all share in the South is, from a hospitality standpoint, just a very welcoming cities and destinations. For all my time in tourism, whenever we've done research on Kentucky specifically, one of the things that stands out above everything else is the friendliness of our people and the hospitality of our people. And while I think Kentucky is best at that, you see that throughout the South. And I think it's just something that's ingrained in Southern society, is to be welcoming and hospitable.
For travelers looking for what we might call the real America, in inverted commas,
sure,
but certainly wanting to experience some true Americana-style experiences, I think Kentucky has them in abundance, doesn't it? I mean, I'm thinking primarily of the Muhammad Ali Museum in Louisville, perhaps the National Corvette Museum in Bowling Green. Can
sure.
you talk a little bit about those two and any others that fit into this category?
Well, and you've hit two very good ones right there. You know, Muhammad Ali is known worldwide as the greatest, and not just from a boxing standpoint, but what he did in his humanitarian efforts later. He was born in Louisville, Kentucky. A lot of folks don't realize that. We're home to what, as you mentioned, probably the greatest American sports car. Every Corvette in the world is built in Bowling Green, and there's the National Corvette Museum that you can travel there and see. It doesn't get much more Americana than driving in a Corvette down a windy road. Well, a lot of people may also not know about Kentucky. We're the birthplace of what many consider the greatest president of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, and you can visit his birthplace at a national park in Hodgenville, Kentucky. Birthplace of bluegrass, horse capital of the world. Horse racing over here, we copied a lot off of the UK with the horse racing, and of course we're the home of the Kentucky Derby, which is run every year. But we have horse racing throughout the state at various tracks 364 days a year. They do close on Christmas. So to be able to come over and visit our small towns, and that's probably the area that I would really focus on the most. We have so many incredibly quaint and historic small towns. Berea, Kentucky, which is located just south of Lexington in central Kentucky, right in the midst of one of these beautiful horse farms that's behind me, is really kind of our artisan and craft capital of the world. And there are artists there that you can actually come in at times of the year and take a class with them, and they'll teach you how to, whether it's painting or sculpture or something else. And those are all based on Appalachian artists and history. And I think it's a really, really cool experience. You can go to a town like Bardstown, Kentucky, which is a town of 14,000 people located 30 miles south of Louisville, our largest city in north central Kentucky. But Bardstown is very small. It's the bourbon capital of the world. There are more bourbon. There are 9 distilleries right there. Distilleries that like Jim Beam, Maker's Mark, world-renowned, iconic brands that started in this very small town and remain there now. You can still go by and see the house where there was a Jim Beam. He wasn't a made-up character. You can see Jim Beam's house. You can't tour it, but it's right there. And actually, his great-grandson continues to live there. And there are great stories like that in all of our small towns. And we have Kentucky's got a long and storied past, obviously. But each of our towns, our northern towns are all bordered by the Ohio River. So you have a lot of river towns where it's all growth and then fell down and have come back. So there's a lot of interesting things here people don't know. We have more coastline than the state of Florida. And people would look at that and say, there's no way. But we do. We have some massive lakes in the west and in southern Kentucky that all count for that. But, I think we show, we have a little bit of everything, I guess. And I hate marketers who say that because, but if you want the urban experience, we can provide that. If you want the really small town Americana experience, you can get that as well. And the thing to keep in mind about Kentucky that is so great, as we talk about our location, we're within a day's drive of 2/3 of the population of the United States. You can be from Atlanta, Georgia to central Kentucky in 4 hours by car. Chicago in about 5. And those are both under an hour flight as well. So we're very, very centrally located. And as part of a road trip for the South, we can either be the starting point, the end point, or the middle point. And that's what's great. If you wanted to fly into Atlanta, come up through Georgia and Tennessee, hit Kentucky, come back down and fly back out of Nashville, it's easily done. Or into Charlotte. We have a lot of direct flights around us. And as I said, we've got the one coming into Northern Kentucky Airport from Paris on a daily basis.
And on bourbon, you have various routes and distillery tours set up, don't you, that the visitor can follow? And I think there are incentives if they go to 2 or 3 or maybe more, they get a T-shirt or something. Could you explain a little bit more about that?
Sure, that's the Kentucky Bourbon Trail, and it includes about 39 distilleries, both large and small, around the state now. But the primary trail are really the big iconic brands that I mentioned: Jim Beam, Maker's Mark, and others. And you can get a passport. You pick it up at any of the distilleries or a couple of the visitor centers around the state and go through. And when you take your tour, they'll stamp it. And if you complete the entire tour, and for the main trail, I think it's 9 distilleries, I believe they send you a special glass now. It used to be a T-shirt. They've changed it over to a glass, or you can pick it up there. Okay. But it's cool, and the process of making bourbon, there are a few differences that each distillery makes in that process, but really it's the history and the heritage, and walking through the rick houses, which are the large warehouses out there that some hold 55,000 barrels, and you'll just see 8, 9, 10 of them in a row right there, all filled and aging. Right now, there are about 9 million barrels of bourbon aging in Kentucky. That's enough for 2 barrels of bourbon for every resident of Kentucky.
Well, that should do us during lockdown, I think.
We're going through it quickly right now.
Sure. But one of the other things I recall from my own visits that Kentucky is known for is caves. You have a lot of underground caves, obviously underground, but you have visitor experiences where you can go into the parks and take a tour down into these caves. Just explain about why that is a unique Kentucky experience too.
Well, remember I talked about the limestone shelf and the filtration. That's what causes all the caves here. But we're home to Mammoth Cave National Park, which is the largest cave system in the world. And you can actually go down in there. And there's a long history with Mammoth Cave. It was used at one point during the Civil War, the United States Civil War, as an arms depot and a supply depot that they could put everything underground and guard it. But there's so many interesting stories there. But you can take that tour. There's also in and around that area, Horse Cave, Kentucky, which is a very small town nearby there, and just north of Bowling Green, about an hour and a half north of Nashville, Tennessee. Horse Cave, Kentucky, at their visitor center, you walk into downtown and you're looking right down into a cave. You can walk straight down from the street down into the cave, or if you're really adventurous, you could rappel down into it and walk around. But the cave systems here, and really, South Central Kentucky is where a lot of those are. We also have some up in Eastern Kentucky, but it's just unique. And as I said, they've been used for survival. They've been used in wartime, and as tourism destinations. So of all of them, though, Mammoth Cave, and again, Mammoth Cave is a national park. So I know a lot of folks enjoy visiting our national parks, and it's not that far actually from Abraham Lincoln's birthplace. So if your travelers are interested in Kentucky, in the U.S. national parks, Kentucky has a couple right near one another that they can knock out probably in a day or two.
Okay, and I have to ask what I have you. Was Kentucky Fried Chicken invented in Kentucky?
Yes, it was, in Corbin, Kentucky. The very first Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurant was in Corbin, Kentucky. Colonel Harlan Sanders created that, his famous 11 herbs and spices. And you can still visit his very first KFC restaurant and museum in Corbin. And Corbin is about 40 minutes north of the Tennessee border in South Central Kentucky, right along Interstate 75. So it's very easy to access and get to.
Well, you've certainly given us an interesting overview of what is obviously a diverse state, and with a lot of attractions for visitors. For travel agents watching this video that want to find out more information, do you have any virtual online tours or videos that you can point them in the direction of?
We do. If you go to KentuckyTourism.com, we actually, when the COVID-19 situation hit, we, over the last year, had put together a number of episodic videos. Everything that talks about horses to bourbon to cocktail making to really all. We tried to cover all of our pillars that we deem important to Kentucky tourism. So that includes culinary and music and the arts and history and bourbon, horses, and et cetera. So we had these videos ready, and the plan was to roll them out on our new website. Well, the website, as websites always do, had some delays, and we were going to roll them out a couple of weeks, all the way through August. That's how many we had. And we just decided, we know folks have a lot of time on their hands. We realize that people are still going to be interested in traveling. So we launched all of them at once. So there are actually 48 videos, an episodic series. They range in time from 4 minutes to 15 that are out there. And again, it's KentuckyTourism.com. When you go to the website, it'll say binge-worthy videos. And you can download those and view those. And actually the viewership has been off the charts for those. We're very happy with them. But it'll give you an idea of, from a perspective, what it looks like here in Kentucky. And really part of the culture. We wanted to make them, there's not a strong call to action. We wanted to make them more educational and aspirational. And I'm real happy with how they turned out. So those are all up and ready for viewership. Okay,
well, thanks, Mike. Thanks for joining us today. It's been very interesting and entertaining. I'll let you go. It looks like your horse is waiting for you behind there.
Well, Steve, I appreciate the opportunity, and thanks to you and Visit the USA for everything you do on Kentucky's behalf and the entire country. So it's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you.
Cheers, Mike. Thank you.